Hello and welcome to another Webinar Wednesday. This is Trevor, and today we're going to be talking about user permissions and data cleanup and how we're going to be able to get the most out of, especially learning how to manage and run a duplicate contact search, and doing a few other things there. So to go ahead and get started, we're actually going to start here in the admin data cleanup section right there. And what this does is, by default, Infusionsoft doesn't automatically check for duplicate records that you might have inside the system. So when you're doing an import, the good thing to be aware of is if you've done an import of 100 clients and now you have some other list that you have obtained, but you might have crossovers where some clients already exist in the system. If you import the second list, it's going to create duplicate records for those that have crossover. It does not, upon an import, a standard normal contact import, it does not do any sort of duplicate check. So what you can do periodically or whenever you would like, come over to your data cleanup section, and then you first check for the duplicate records, which we'll run through in just a moment. And then you have two different choices. Once you have identified those who are considered duplicates, you then could have the choice to merge the duplicate contact records by overriding old data with new data, or merge the duplicate contact records by only adding new data, not overriding old data. Now, to clarify a little bit about what this is talking about, the data referenced is only field data. It's not talking about tags, it's not about order history or about email history or notes. All of those will be concatenated or just grouped together, and none of it will be lost, regardless of the choice you make. It will update and change if any address information, custom field data, anything like that. If you choose override old data with new data, the newest client record, contact record, is going to override any field data that exists on the previous one. Whereas if you choose the only adding new data, not overriding old data, it's only going to look for empty fields. And if you have on your record, one of them doesn't have a field value in one, but the other does, it's going to then take the one that has the field value, and that's what's going to display in the end. The other thing that's definitely good to know through this process is, let's just say you have an original contact that's in your system that might have been added to some sort of we'll just say an event registration campaign. And then you get a list of those who attended your event that you want to import and then merge together, because of course you would have duplicate records at that point. In that situation, if you choose by overriding old data with new data, that actually also indicates which contact is the one that will be kept. Now, the campaigns recognize who's in the campaign based on the client ID. And so if you choose the merge duplicate records by overriding old data with new data, that means that the newest record, the one that you just imported from your client list, for the attendee list rather, is the contact ID and the overall record that will be remaining once you merge the two together. What that means is the one that was originally in place and going through the campaign would now be no longer in the campaign at all. And so that is something to be aware of. If you have individuals in a campaign and you're now bringing in a new list, I would highly recommend using the second option, because the original record would be kept, not the new one. And that would not change at that point anything that is going on in the campaign. That's not just dealing with whether the contact will continue in the campaign, but let's just say you did choose this record and we know that they're now removed and not in the campaign any longer. At times, that is actually results in inaccurate displaying of the report information in the campaign when you're on the performance view. If that individual, or we'll say 10 individuals, might have been on a certain sequence, when you go and do this and pull them out of the campaign without, through a merge or something like that, I have seen it on a few occasions actually where the numbers display as if those 10 individuals were still there. However, when you click on it, then you see, the number is not the same. It's 10 less than what it actually is displaying. And that's because of this situation where you've either deleted or merged the contact records, and now those individuals are not in that campaign anymore, and they weren't that no action was run to stop them in the campaign, and as a result you pulled them out, through the action performed, but their number is now ghosting really on that sequence, and you don't have the ability to see it as much, and it just throws off your campaign the reporting wise. The way to fix that is actually to create a duplicate version of your sequence, a copied version, and then actually removing the one in place and putting that other one intact, which can get very hairy when it comes to if you have a long sequence and maybe there's normal contacts actually going through it. And so that's just something to be aware of, and to be aware of some of the repercussions of the choice that you take when doing your actual merge of the contact records. Now let's go ahead and take a look at, if I'm going to begin, I'm going to check for my duplicate records. Go ahead and hit next. This just gives you a little overview of a few things. I almost always would recommend checking all records. It does indicate it may take a long time, but to be honest, it actually only takes a very short amount of time, as long as you don't have other users doing extensive reporting and querying searches. That'll take up a lot of your speed. So as we scroll down, we have what's called the stages. This is just the logic check to know what is it going to be looking at when performing the duplicate check. Will it be looking, for example, on stage 3, will it only be looking for people with the same email? Or on these other ones, you can see email plus phone, email plus name, or it could be first, last name, and company. The good thing to note about this filter is the little plus sign is actually and criteria, and the way Infusionsoft reads this is, in the first example, first, last name, and company, if the individuals do not have a value filled in for company, but they of course have the first and last name, this will not count. Values have to be in all of the fields that are referenced for it to actually be considered as part of this option, the filter option. So if they have the same company value, same first and last name, then of course in this case they would be identified and considered a duplicate at that point. In the situation, you can actually leave all of the boxes checked. There's not really any performance difference as far as how long it takes, to be honest, but it's just a matter of if you find it necessary or beneficial to try and gather all duplicate possibilities or not. You'll have the opportunity to review the list and see who the system considered to be a duplicate before you go ahead and merge them. But anyway, once you go ahead and do this, you'll just hit next. It'll say this will automatically begin the deduping process. Do you want to continue? I say okay. It's going to just prepare to run an action. In your case, it's probably going to have a large amount more of records to check. But once it actually performs the list of duplicates, it's going to pop up and give us the option to view the list that it considers to be a duplicate in the system, which you can certainly do. You're more than welcome to jump in and take a look at anything. You can export the list, which could be good. So you can go back to clean up more of your data. Click here to see all of your contacts. What I'd recommend is either clicking this link or this link. Either one gets you back to data cleanup. So once you've done that, it's basically like those individuals have been queued up to be really ready to merge at that point. So all of your duplicates are now in place for the system to be able to go ahead and merge them. And so, again, we already discussed a little bit about each choice and which one it does, but one of those two choices is what you'll need to choose at this point to go ahead and merge them together. So that is a little bit about how you actually perform a duplicate search and then actually merging the data between your duplicate records. So go ahead and let us know if you have any questions about that, but that's how you would go ahead and approach it. So the only other item I would like to discuss on the page that we're on is this upper section, modify existing records. So it's actually almost identical to a standard contact import process. However, as you can see from the description, it says it allows you to update existing records in Infusionsoft by importing a CSV file that contains the corresponding contact ID or Infusionsoft ID. So when maybe you're just updating a spreadsheet or adding data from another system or whatever the situation might be, when you've done an export of contacts from Infusionsoft and you make sure that you have the Infusionsoft ID as part of the export, then it'll allow you to actually come here. You don't go to the contact import section. You'd go to your admin data cleanup and then modify existing records. And as long as that Infusionsoft ID is still on the form, when you import it, it automatically knows who to tie the information to, and so it'll automatically update the record with whatever data that you have now added to that file. So definitely something to help save a lot of headache and time, especially if, as we saw on the duplicate check, if you don't have some certain parameters that are going to identify your duplicates. Doing modifying existing records, as long as you have the ID, can help with some of that. The next option we'll obviously dive into that'll take up a majority of our time is user permissions. And what I'd like to start with is if we, for example, go to edit user permissions, what I'll first actually show you is under mine, you'll see that if I'm considered an admin in the system, then everything is already set to yes, and it gives you a little message up here saying that as an admin, you can do anything and everything, so therefore you are set to yes. And let's just say maybe you have an individual on your user list that is currently an admin but no longer should be, as an example. So if we go into the user record, the user groups tab is actually where you can remove the admin capability, which therefore would put in whatever your global permissions are. So start restricting their ability if you would find that necessary. We're going to actually come back here in just a minute and talk a little bit about each one of these, but we're going to, as mentioned, talk about the permissions themselves first. So if we go back over to our user permissions, what we have is obviously a list of different sections within the software in case you haven't been in this screen. And this allows us to identify the actual permissions for each area for this specific contact specific user. You can overall edit your global permissions. The global permissions are basically, if I add a new user, what are their default permissions going to be? That's what a global permission is allowing you to set on a mass basis what you want your permissions to be, so as you add new people, they're automatically set. And so you obviously have the ones listed here. You'll notice that there's actually a bit of separation. Contacts, you'll note, you can create notes and appointments and things for them, but the actual section pertaining to the notes and appointments is actually under, there it is, calendar. So a task appointment note, even though it pertains really to contacts, it can also, notes, for example, can be found under companies, they can be found under opportunities, you can do other things with them. So they're actually a little bit more separated out. So we'll touch on that in just a minute here. But I wanted to just run through a couple of these because often there is not a lot of clarity surrounding them. One point of resource to briefly mention before we get much farther into this is hovering over your question mark icon up here on the upper right and going over to the user guide is a great way to get some resource into this. I found that, I think as of this morning, it pops up with this disallowed characters, but I don't think that that'll be an ongoing issue. So what I'd recommend is in the search screen that'll pop up, you can just enter user permissions, and you'll get a large number of help articles that especially go over even each section. There's some articles that are actually like user permissions dash contact, user permissions dash marketing, whatever the case is, and you can choose the one applicable and reference that. So just the contacts are the ones that are most desired to be controlled often, I've seen. So I just wanted to add a little bit of insight to some of that, and then we'll go and touch on a couple of other things. So can reassign is, of course, talking about reassigning the contact records to other users. And so they would at that point have the list drop down to be able to change the assignment for the contacts. Adding them is clear enough, just creating a new contact. Can use note templates is actually referring to those pre-created notes in the system. It's not just talking about being able to add a note, like a one-off note. It's actually referring to pre-created note templates there. So, and you can create those in your marketing templates area, in case you're wondering. Can unmerge has a few, it's not actually talking about unmerging, like if you've, like we just saw, had a duplicate, we merge them together. It's not talking about unmerging the contacts like that. The unmerge is actually, according to Infusionsoft, it actually doesn't pertain to what a user can do. But it actually, in a way, affects what the users can see, in fact. So one example of that is on occasion, I've seen that individuals who add the sales pipeline to their dashboard, the widget for breaking out your sales pipeline, if this is marked as no, on occasion there's an error message in the widget itself as they add it to their dashboard that says the service level or account type that you have within Infusionsoft does not allow you to view this component, and if you would like that to change, basically upgrade your account type. And that's actually not true. The type of account that is had at that point actually gives the accessibility to that module, but the thing that fixes it, in fact, is turning the unmerge setting to yes, and then that, in fact, permits the viewability of the widget. So there's a few little other oddities that the unmerge will enable. So I recommend always keeping it on. I mean, there's nothing that's really going to be really different as far as what the contact or what the user can do. It's again just a few little things that they'll be able to see and not have issues with. So can delete is, of course, referring to being able to delete a contact. This is really where some of the confusion has lied, is can view unassigned records. That is not talking about unassigned to this specific user. It's talking about contacts that don't have any assigned user. So if they can view them, for example, if you have this set to yes and can edit unassigned records set to no, that way they can, of course, search for whomever they would like, and depending on your combination of settings, for example, if you wished, you can set it so they can only see contacts assigned to them and be able to edit them, and be able to also see contacts that are not assigned to anyone, so kind of unclaimed leads, and it's up to you if you'd like them to edit them. You can change it so they can't, so you can't just have someone coming in and stealing everyone else's unclaimed leads, but you could set up some sort of process that you can have them basically request and show that they have claim to a lead, and then someone with higher user permissions can go in and make that assignment over to them is one option. So going further down the list, obviously can change the lead source, is just talking about changing the lead source. Can view all records and edit all records are talking now about can view records assigned to other users. If you would like them to be able to see them all but not edit them, of course make this yes and edit no. Can search will actually remove the ability for them to search, obviously if you turn that to no. So that's a little bit about the contacts area and some good points of clarity there. Again, if you have more questions or maybe I went over it a little too fast and if the video just wasn't making sense, feel free to check out the help article and it will explain that quite a bit further. You of course have similar attributes for company. They're all pretty straightforward, nothing to really clarify too much there. Similarly here in the opportunity section, you have a separate area for can view and edit unassigned records. That's the same thing, whether they're accessible and or rather assigned to an existing user or not. And up here can add, search, delete, edit, close leads, can edit all records or view all records. Is what you have the opportunity to see there. Referral partners, once it loads, there we go. This is obviously letting your users manage and view your referral partner section. So can view them all, can edit them, can add, can search, delete, can set commissions, so editing your actual commission program, or if not, you can allow them to view them without editing them or changing them rather. Creating payouts is of course not actually sending payments. The payouts in the way that the referral partner system works are just adding a kind of a manual line reflecting that and somewhere else that you have made a payment, and so therefore their ledger should be 0 or less than what it is if you've added a payment, but it's not actually paying the referral partner. So to confirm that. And obviously deleting payouts if maybe they themselves are the user are also a referral partner. Having their ability to edit this can obviously lead to a lot of possible issues. So just keep that in mind. Can manage referral partner programs are just talking about being able to actually hop in there and adjust what the partners can get commissions for and who is included in what program and that kind of stuff. Can adjust their redirects, so that's creating the tracking links and things like that. Can manage referral partner resources. That's talking about the promotional resources you can make available to your referral partners, such as giving them email content, images to be able to use in their own emails, so on and so forth. Can create records in bulk. Is just that you can go to a list of contacts, run an action to make them all referral partners, and that's what that's doing. Can set a referral partner in bulk, and that's basically just saying who has been the one referring these leads, or likewise, who is the parent referral partner is how you can do some of that. Orders and invoicing. A lot of these are pretty straightforward. There's not a whole lot to cover, in fact, on these. Feel free to take a look at some of these, but overall they've mapped these pretty clearly. The e-commerce section similarly has pretty straightforward things. There's only a couple that aren't often used, and so I'll just touch on that. So under the product section, obviously it's pretty clear with being able to view all products, edit them, can search, add, delete. Can use a digital product merge field. In your digital products, if you'll have another section that you can add different fields to, add different data on. So that's what it's talking about. Can see encrypted digital product keys. Is you can actually set up your own, obviously, product key, and you can set parameters around them, and so that's what that's talking about. And it's just when you have the product, it's actually in the product screen, and you'll see the tabs talking about the product keys and things. Can track inventory. To be honest, Infusionsoft doesn't do a whole lot with inventory tracking. It doesn't prevent orders once the inventory hits 0, but tracking the to be able to actually see where it's at versus what it was set on is what this is talking about. The order forms is obviously the actual order form section to view, edit, add, delete, search, manage shopping carts. So pretty clear on the rest. The user section, this is not actually reflecting, for example, if they want to be able to see the other users in a drop-down list to be able to know who they can change the assignment to. This user section is exactly the section we're under, admin users. That's the only section it's tying to. So can view and edit the actual user's records, can add, search, edit the permissions, assign roles. So these are something good to be aware of because I've actually seen it on a number of occasions where the individual who had called tech support while I worked there that, needed to be able to gain access to a certain module actually had their user permissions set in such a way where even though they didn't actually have permission to edit the module, could go into the user section and change their own permissions so they could, at that point, change it to access whatever they wanted. So it's very good to be aware of the users tab and making sure you have it set to what you feel is best, to make sure that if you don't want them to be able to change their own permission, or change their role to an admin, for example, that you can adjust that as necessary. Unlocked user accounts are just referring to when you have a user who has attempted to log in multiple times and they get locked out. There was the option to be able to actually unlock the user account. This specific setting, I believe with actually an update to the software that was made close to a year and a half ago now, the unlock option is actually no longer presented. But this was always in place as far as the way the system was built. I just don't think they've removed it, to be honest. So anyway, just to keep in mind. Can deactivate user account is obviously cutting off someone's access. Can activate them, resend users, cancel invitations, reset other users' passwords. Again, there used to be the option for this, similar to the deactivation, but with the now login process with the Infusionsoft ID, because previously that was not in place, but now that is not an option for you. So can manage user teams, which is actually what we'll talk about after this. And so that's what the users page is referring to. The calendar, of course, goes into the, as we mentioned, task notes and appointments. Can view them all, edit them as far as existing appointments and notes and whatnot. Can add, can search, delete. Assign tasks are obviously, if you're creating a task, who should it be assigned to? If you have that set to no, they're only going to be able to assign it for themselves, not anyone else. Can view unassigned records and edit unassigned records is the same thing, whether they're assigned to a user or not. The email pop accounts are actually referring to if you want to have your mail from your actual email account forwarded to the Infusionsoft inbox, which actually is up to your preference if you want it, but there's not a whole lot of functionality gained from it. And the inbox that is provided is far from the same types of options that you have in a standard email account, like a Gmail account or an Outlook account. You can take a look at the inbox itself and see that for yourself, but the pop account is referring to the actual setting up on each user account. If they want their own email forwarded into Infusionsoft, you can actually set that up on your actual user account, and we can look at that once we go into look at the user teams. So the pop account is just talking about email forwarding. Calendar, you'll have each user broken out here, and it's whether or not you want this specific contact, or this specific user rather, to be able to see the calendar for each individual user. You can turn that on or off. Application is just in general, what things do you want your user to be able to do? Can they add a tag? Can they see different appointments for account management on the account management page? See an app for the account management page. Can they access your company's billing management information with Infusionsoft? Can they import check for duplicates, roll back imports. So all of these are pretty straightforward. You can see other users, reveal credit card data. Obviously, you might want to mark as no depending on your preference there. This is just updating contact field values. You can do it on a mass basis, of course. Yeah, all these are all pretty straightforward. It can apply actions and run action sets are actually referring to running mass actions. So applying a mass tag, having the actions drop down on a contact search are referring to that can apply actions. Having the report section, if you turn these all to no, for example, not only would they not be able to see the reports, but even unless you share a specific saved search with them, if you have it marked as everyone and things, they might be able to pull it in on their dashboard, but they can't see it anywhere else. And so, because they can't actually view those reports. And often, if you have a saved search, and actually I've seen this, depending on the combination of the other settings you have, if you say they should be able to see this certain saved search for your marketing, but I have all these turned to no, when they try and click on it, because that will present it in the drop down because you shared it with them, when they try and click on it, because it's now trying to access a marketing report, it'll say you don't have permission to view this. And so they won't be able to see it without the reports being turned on. So this just the combinations of how you have it set will just need to be looked at depending on what you're looking for. This one you can ignore. It's referring to the old functionality, legacy functionality, that's found under marketing legacy. It's not talking about the actual campaign builder. It's talking about an old legacy functionality. So you shouldn't be using it anyway, so ignore it. Email is referring to obviously sending broadcasts. Same thing with follow-up sequences as to legacy. You can ignore it. Follow-up sequences only exist in the legacy area of the marketing section. They don't have anything whatsoever to do with actual sequences in a campaign. They're old functionality, and you shouldn't be using them. As far as from eventually they will be phased out is what I'm referring to. If you're using them now, it's not the end of the world, but you would actually increase your flexibility and functionality by switching to the campaigns, to be quite honest. So if you have any questions about that, I mean, don't feel bad that if you are using them. Let us know, and we're more than happy to answer any questions or get you migrated over to the campaigns if need be. So campaign section, you obviously have the details about removing, adding, searching, editing. Lead sources, same thing. Web forms, same thing. Pretty clear. So that is regarding the user permissions. So what I wanted to point out now is if I'm viewing, I can easily switch between users here. Or if I have a certain user that I have in place, I can copy permissions from another user, and all of the permissions for this user will now be updated to whatever the permissions for the other user would be. So that's one possibility that you can do. The other cool thing is once you add a user, and it's even pending the invitation, you can edit their permissions while that invitation's been sent out. So if you want to specifically make sure they can't access certain things and can access others, you could, you can do that before they actually even accept the invitation. So it's something to be aware of. Now, if we go ahead and look again at our contact record, what I wanted to point out is before we get into the user groups, I talked about the mail accounts and the POP side of things. You can click, as you scroll down to the page, click under mail accounts, and I can add a new POP account to set up an Outlook or whatever my email is. Set that up here to have it forward to my Infusionsoft inbox if desired. Social accounts, same thing. You can have them. This user actually doesn't have the required permissions to do that, but you can set them up for various social platforms like Twitter and Facebook and things of that nature. Those others that you actually don't see would be like LinkedIn, Instagram, different, Vimeo, that kind of a thing. You can actually get around it without having to have them be social accounts, and you can actually just link icons or images that you insert into the email. So if you have questions, you can let me know. We did discuss that actually a little bit on our previous Demystifying the Infusionsoft Email Editor webinar. So if you have questions, let us know. The follow-up sequences, again, you don't need to worry about these. These are old functionality, legacy functionality there. So hopping back to the top, I just actually wanted to point out a few things because it's actually pertaining to the users. The preferences are actually user specific. So not only can you obviously do your standard local time and things of whatever's applicable for them and their start and end days, but you can change what their defaults are when they go in. Are they looking for tasks? What do you want them to see? What is their standard search type? Are they always searching for contacts, or are they searching for opportunities or notes? Or should the default start page be, a dashboard or a custom page? And you can make it always go to campaigns. You can make it do whatever you want. The default search view, of course, is the interactive, which is what it always defaults to be with, where you have the little icons below the contact record that show those areas like notes, appointments, email history, tags, quotes, and orders, so on and so forth. Or the grid view, which is more of like an Excel document, where you have columns and you can see all of the different data within those columns. And signature at the top of the reply is, again, preference. So for an email. The actual signatures are, of course, edited here. Notes is just basically if you want notes overall. This is, again, just a large text box. You can't search for the notes that might be on a specific user. But user groups is now where we want to get into. So the groups themselves are, you can see I have sales rep for this specific person, but I don't have anything else, admin, marketing manager, so on and so forth. Now, what do those actually affect? Now, if I'm actually looking, for example, on an opportunity record, and if we open up the opportunity record, where it says currently assigned to, I open my dropdown, and you'll notice only 3 users are showing up. In fact, when I have 4, Mason was another user. But if we take a glance, you'll notice I'm in the test contact here. The test user is in the sales rep group. But if I go over and I look at Mason, the other user I have in place, if I open this up, go over to the user groups, he's only in the admin group. Now, you might think, well, he's admin, he should be able to see and do everything and be everywhere, right? Well, that's true of the first admin because they're not only added to the admin group, they're added to every group. So the original admin, that's absolutely true for. Any other admin after that point is only added to the admin group, not added to all of the other groups. So for example, in this specific case where you're looking at the opportunity record and you want to be able to identify who the assigned user or owner is for that, they either have to be in the sales rep category, which is what we had already saw for the test user, or the sales manager. Either of the sales will get them the ability to be assigned as the owner of an opportunity. And you'll find little nuances like that throughout the others, such as who can be assigned as for different other components like notes and things like that. Different things of who can be doing certain things with orders. You have the order manager. So those are pre-created user groups, and so that's definitely one option that you have. You can actually, under your settings, create your own group and set up its own permission. So it actually is defaulted to our CRM. So if we hop back to admin settings, you can see down here we have user settings for actual users. And so here's again another way to access your global permissions. Or the one that we're actually needing to look at now is teams. Teams are, you can create a team and then you can say who should be selected as part of this team. And once you create the team, once you select them, then you'll be able to actually set up the permissions surrounding the team, and you can run actions with the whole team involved. And so that is definitely something that's kind kind of good to know. You can also, let's just say if you have, I don't know, 10 users and you set up a team with 3 of them, you can, in your round robins, for example, identify only a certain team that should be used for a round robin. Or you can do other things like that. So that's just a little bit of a breakdown to something that you may or may not have seen regarding the teams. And you can go ahead and take a look at any of the other settings here, especially relationships and how they tie in, different things of that nature. But that sums it up for us regarding the data cleanup area, running our dupe checks and whatnot, and also our user permissions, and how to get a little bit more out of each. So there were a few questions that were sent in this week, and one of them had asked, can I see what the altered permissions affect as if I were the user? So what he's asking is, if, for example, I'm changing the settings for Mason here, and I obviously am not a different user. So if I'm editing his permissions, can I actually log in as Mason and see what would be in place as if Mason was the one logged in? The answer to that is by default, no, you cannot. Your settings that you change for that user, unless you have their login credentials, you cannot log in as them and see it. The Infusionsoft doesn't give you that ability to do that. So one other option, if you have a free user license, just set up your own user under a different email that you have access to, copy the permissions from that individual over to the test user, and if it's critical that you see and make sure it's set up the way you want it, and you don't want to call support or call us, you can set up a test user and actually see exactly what they would see when they log in, and exactly see what they can and can't do. So that's one option for you if you don't have their login credentials. But to answer your question, you cannot log in as them or have access as them to see what they would see from a permission standpoint. So again, referencing the help article about the permissions can hopefully get you some answers as far as what different setting combinations will provide. Another question sent in was, what can I do with user groups? And we actually hopped in and looked at a little bit about how to set up a user group, and we discussed a little bit about round robins and things. But you can actually, for example, do contact sharing amongst user groups, and you can set up the different permissions and run actions to share among them. So that's one option of another thing you can do there. The next question was, is there another way to have duplicate checking done on different parameters than those listed? So what they're referring to is, if we go to data cleanup, check for our duplicates, and we're checking for all of them. What he's talking about is between, if I'm not wanting to search for first and last name and company, can I do any other filter off of any other item here? Unless you're willing to think a little bit outside the box, unfortunately, no. There's not any other way to do any other dupe check besides what is provided. And what I mean by out of the box is you have really 2 options. One is, and by far a less expensive, less involved option, would be to export the list. And we can actually use this in a little bit of a way that we saw previously, but export the list of contacts that you're wanting to have this search done on, and that you might know is duplicates, or maybe this is prior to you importing the list that came from the event attended, for example, that will be duplicates. So if I wanted to get around this, maybe companies are relevant, maybe first and last name I have in place, you can export the list. You have obviously the contact information, create a new column called company, and provide the same value for every one of them. So it could be test company or ABC company. Whatever it is, that doesn't actually have to be accurate. You can fill it in so it will match first, last name, and company. Therefore, you've satisfied company being all the same. First and last name is now up to whatever's in the system. And so presuming those are the same, now you can meet this criteria and only do a search really off of first and last name. So using a little bit of a out-of-the-box mindset to that can do it. Another approach, which is more involved, is you can set up an API where if you have a registration form on the site and you want duplicate checking done not off of the email but off of something else, you can through API do different things like that. The next question, the last question in fact, was how can you merge records without the mass action to tell you what data type, or to tell it what data you want kept? So what they're referring to is if you have two records that are the same in Infusionsoft, and I just want to tell it what information should be kept from one versus the other, how do we do it? So let's go ahead and I'm just going to add a contact here, and we'll just call this duplicate A, and then we'll go ahead and just throw in an email here, and that's good enough. And we can obviously, you can come back and add whatever data you want. So presuming that's what we need there, let's go ahead and just create another one. And then maybe so I'm just going to say add this person anyway, so we have a duplicate. So if I now run my search and I have two contacts here, right? And presuming you have other data to keep track of, that's fine. So under my actions, I can now say merge duplicate contacts, right? So I click on that. It presents me the more recent contact and then the original contact, the first one that was added. And you'll notice I have arrows to say, like down here, if I have one of these that as one type of data here, one type of data here, I can just push my arrows and get it to be whatever I want, and I didn't add data on the first one to be able to really make that clear, but you would have whatever other field data you would have would be possibly a very long page list if you have a lot of data. Same thing here, merge them all together. And again, you're not losing notes, you're not losing order history, you're not losing tags. It'll just merge together the data and you can tell it what data you want. And so you can say they're not duplicates, they are duplicates, merge them and return to search, merge and view the contact record, whatever you want to do there. So that would be how you can merge the records without the overall mass action to do a dupe check and then merge them all at once without customizing what they can do. So feel free to, again, let us know if you have any questions, but that is a little bit about user permissions and data cleanup and learning how to manage your duplicates and merge them together. So thanks again for watching, and look forward to next week.